Good evening. Welcome to Up Close, Meet the Poet Behind the Verse. I am your host, River Maria Urke, and here to help me pull this off is Julie Martin.
Hello.
Here at Up Close, we showcase one poet a month with an interview, poetry reading, and giveaway. It is our goal to introduce there we go. Oh my goodness. Introduce the person behind the poems. With that, I'd like to do a little housekeeping and ask our Zoom audience to remain muted during the duration of the show. And that do you have any questions you want for the poet? Just put them in the chat. If we have time at the end, we'll dive into them. We're going to have a giveaway today, details later. A shout out to our sponsors, the League of Minnesota Poets. And with that, I'd like to remind us all that we are live on Facebook. And with that, sit back and I'd like to introduce to you our August Up Close poet, Annette. Julie, do it for me. I'm too flustered.
Gagliardi.
Yes, thank you. So here, let's see. I don't know what is wrong with my computer. It's like having a fit. So
River, should I explain the giveaway while you're...
Oh, I'm almost got it here. Oh,
okay.
Geez. I know. Well, you know what? Forget the whole computer. And okay, so Annette is a published author that has dabbled in many different genres. We primarily know her as a poet and the president of the Mississippi Valley Poets and Writers. There's much more to Annette. She is a woman of faith, a mother, dedicated grandmother, teacher, and storyteller. She loves to garden, can, quilt, hold tea parties, and craft. She can often be found with a grandchild or two in her company. Annette and her husband, Jim, have 4 daughters and 7 grandchildren, 3 boys and 4 girls. They are an impressively supportive family. Annette was born in South Dakota and moved to Minnesota in 1964. She was in 9th grade. She graduated from South St. Paul in 1968. In 1984, she earned her Bachelor of Applied Science at the U of M. In 88, she earned her Master's of Education degree from the U of M. And then in 2000, she got her ESL certification from Hamline University. Annette has been also involved in 2 big projects that everyone should know about. The first is she has co-wrote with 2 other teachers a curriculum titled, and she's going to hold these up if everyone wants to look at, she's going to hold them up when I talk about them. Raising Children with Roots, Rights, and Responsibilities, that is based on the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. She collaborated more recently with Laura Cozy Lanik on a poetry anthology that provided space for survivors of sexual abuse to tell their story, titled Upon Waking, 58 Survivors Speak Out from the Shadow of Abuse. This book has sold over 500 copies and is being donated to women's shelters in the upper Midwest. Since the 1980s, Annette's poetry has been published in many anthologies, in print and online, websites, magazines, and newspapers. In addition, she is the author of 2 children's books, The Three Betty Goats Griff in 2010, and Resourceful Erica, A Tall Tale in 2014. She self-published her first poetry book in 2019, Proper Poems for Ladies, and a few naughty ones too. And she's coming out with her second edition this month. Also due to come out this month is Ponderosa Pines, her first young adult novel based on the 1959 forest fire of Deadwood, South Dakota, where she grew up. She has 2 origami micro chapbooks titled Earth, In My Journey, and In Cordova. And finally, her first full-length poetry book titled The Short Supply of Viability launched in July. Without further ado, let us welcome Annette Gagliardi.
Well, hi, and thank you for having me, River. I so appreciate it.
Totally.
It's nice
Well,
to be here.
Thank you. And we don't usually do this, but I'd like to start with your favorite poem.
Well, my favorite poem is one that I wrote a few years ago, and it's called, actually, this was a very hard question for me to answer. So Desperado is one that is a favorite, and I still like it a lot. It's called Desperado, and probably some of you have heard of it. The frigid night releases Desperado, who slides between the sheets. Ever so slowly, she glides her toes to the lover who snores and sleeps. The rise and fall of his sinewy chest gives courage to her plan, which is to snuggle ever so close to the heat rolling off her man. If her mission is successful and temptation can be tamed, frozen feet ever so cold will thaw and live again. So stealthily, silently slides her toes in search of its chosen mead, while unsuspecting Romeo lies in slumber's sweet flower and weed. Under the covers, in darkness, Desperado surrounds her foe. Both love and hate beguile her as she tries not too far to go. Those feet on that sightless journey do find the prize they seek, and ever so greedy they scurry to the source of that slumbering heat. A voice ever loud in the darkness shatters the still of the night. Desperado's frozen caresses have given him such of a fright. After a time, there is slumber. The oh so frigid will go. Once again, he lies snoring and sleeping as he snuggles his Desperado. If you live in Minnesota or Wisconsin, you know January gets really cold.
Yes, it does. You began writing poetry in your 20s. What was the subject that sparked words to come out of you?
My kids. I was at that point doing family daycare, providing daycare for eight or 10 children throughout the week, and they did inspire me to write poetry.
Kids. There are different ways poets write, or it's more like the ways their poems come to them. When you began, can you explain to us how poetry first came to you? And how is that different today?
Well, I was one of those poets who just, if the urge to write was so physical and so immediate that I had to find paper and write it down. So scraps of paper, backs of envelopes, sometimes in crayon on the paper the kids were using for an art project, just finding enough materials to write on, sometimes a napkin. And I used to keep a notebook in my purse and carry it with me, just so I would have it, just one of those little notebooks that you can carry in your purse and just jot things down when I needed to, because it was like I couldn't go on until I got that poem out, or at least the beginning of the poem out. And now I do, I think I write on a regular basis, so that urge isn't sometimes as immediate because I know there's a time for that. But I also now read a lot of poetry from other poets, and I get inspiration from a word or a phrase that takes me somewhere. And then if I follow that lead, that creates a poem frequently. And even if I'm reading prose, even my prose reading, I mean, I just finished reading Elevation by Stephen King, and there were some things in there that was like, oh, I could write about that. So
That's cool. I can relate in some ways. You always knew that you would write when you retired. And that is what you are doing, but you did have some projects before retirement. And the first one I'm thinking of involves curriculum and the UN. Can you explain?
yeah, I did write when I was teaching, but it was professional writing. So I did have some articles that were published on a professional basis. But this book, the Raising Children with Roots, Rights, and Responsibilities, it's the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. And I've been in child development for, 40 years, 50 years, since the early 70s. And my education is around child development, and my teaching was, of course, immersed in child development. So the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Children, it follows because it's what I do. It's what I live for. I think children need to have the rights. But the other thing about this is we said, and responsibilities, because we don't think that anybody who gets a right also has to have the corresponding responsibility.
Oh, completely agree. That's not said enough.
And I wrote that with two other teachers, Lori DuPont and Joanne Foley, so I don't want to forget to say their names. Still good friends.
Cool. And you said that still people are still using it today.
Yes, I'm surprised because a couple of years ago, I visited a classroom and the teacher said, oh, I'm still using this curriculum. And I was like, wow, she was a third grade classroom teacher, and I was surprised that she was using it, but that's great. I'm glad that teachers are using it.
Would you ever be part of upgrading it? Like,
yeah, probably. Knowing who I am.
So your latest book is your first full-length poetry book, A Short Supply of Viability. It was released last month. What is the premise? Can we hear a poem, please?
Yeah, this has been a long time in coming. My mom and dad were both ill with COPD for years. My mom was on oxygen for more than 10 years, and we kids took care of them. So there was some caregiving going on in the 90s. And then and of course I'm taking care of grandchildren and have been since they were born. And my mother-in-law was living with us for 3 months. She had dementia. So we have some of that. And so I gained poetry along the way, but one of the things that I found out when I retired, and I probably knew ahead of time, but so many people retire and they say, I'm going to travel, or I'm going to go to school, or I'm going to write, for instance. And then what they end up doing is taking care of their loved one. And they feel conflicted because they want to take care of their loved one, but they wanted that dream as well. And they end up giving up their travel plans or something because they wanted to take care of their loved one. So that's kind of, this is, some compassion for the people who are caretakers.
It is.
Let's see if I can find one for you. I've got marks. So I'll read you one. This one is about my mother and Frank Sinatra. My mom died on the same day that Frank Sinatra did. And I always said, he found out she passed and he couldn't live another day without her. So Classic Sinatra is the name of this poem. Frank died the same day Mom did. their essence mingling with the marrow of others, meeting their own demise. Sinatra might have been singing. Mom might have been humming along. The slaughterhouse barely opened, its barn red paint flaking in the sunlight, decay and deterioration running rampant among the bodies of those left behind. Rotting wood floors no longer holding the necessary weight to carry on. Medications bulldoze and demolish any scant health left. Bodies raised like aged sheds in abandoned fields. Slow dance with dying, no longer trying to pilfer another long day, butchered and broken into mingled segments of backstory. I choose to think Mom and Frank sang and danced the night away in that old barn. There might have been dragonflies. The sun might have been shining.
Oh, I love that. So this is the book that Annette is giving away today. And so we have two, she's giving away 2 books. So we'll be playing the number game like we do. And everybody will have one guess that you can put in the chat. It's through 1 through 50. And there's 2 numbers. So and we'll find out at the end. Want to give one more look? Can we see what? Yeah. Cool. So you've always lived by the motto, variety is the spice of life. What does
That's
that mean?
true. Well, you can see by the things I've published, curriculum, children's books, poetry I'm actually working on a thriller right now, finishing this, what we've changed the young adult novel to historical fiction. My publisher just changed that last week, but memoir possibly in the future. So I just write everything. But I like variety in my life too. And of course, when you work with children, variety is the name of the game, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it makes life interesting.
Yes, it does.
So you published work definitely has a variety. Another genre you conquered is children's books. You have 2 of the 3 Betty Goats Griff and resourceful Erica, plus your first young adult novel, Ponderosa Pines. For time, let's look at one of these. Can we hear the story behind 3 Betty Goats Griff and what you do with it?
Oh, this is such a fun book. And I'm a little pleasantly surprised that kids just love this book. Little kids just love this book. They come up to me and they say, wow, you're the author of this book. I just love this book. And it's really fun. It's a takeoff. It's a fractured fairy tale. It's a takeoff of the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. But these are the dancing cousins, and they're one's a waltz and one's a tap dancer and one's a ballet dancer, and they each encounter the troll who's quite grouchy, and they change him for the better in some small way. And so at the end, he's a happy guy, and he's kind of cleaned up. Let's see if I can do this. He's a happy guy, and he's cleaned up a little bit. So what I tell the teachers is that it's a book about personal hygiene, but also kindness, because the Billy Goats just knock the troll off the bridge, but the Betty Goats, encourage him to move off the bridge in a different way, and kind of encourage him along the way. So the story behind this book is that I used to teach adults English as a second language, and I had a variety of parents in the room, some who spoke Spanish and some who spoke Hmong, and I had to kind of give them all on the same level. And so I went to the library and I pulled out like 6 copies of 6 different versions of the Billy Goats Gruff, and I did a lesson on the Billy Goats Gruff, and had a variety of people read and different things. And in the versions, many of them were the exact same wording, but all of the illustrations were different. And so we talked about that. And at the end of the night, I said, oh, does anybody have any last comments or questions about, what we've talked about tonight? And one man raised his hand and he said, well, I think that the troll was maligned. He was just probably a homeless person living under the bridge. And, all those people are walking on his roof. So I thought, wow, I could write a story about that. So this is why the Betty Goats exist.
And then you go into classrooms now.
I do. Yes, I just offered myself to Julie Martin this evening earlier. I go into kindergartners and first graders. I read this story to them and just talk about the story. And then with the second graders, I go in with a PowerPoint called Personification of the Betty Goats. And then they give me I have a 10-question survey, and they decide whether it's real or not, if it's fact or fiction. And then at the end, we review that survey and they can change their mind. So, like, do goats really eat hair? And do Betty goats really, do animals really wear clothing and that kind of thing? And so they have to figure it out. So, anyway.
Cool. Well, as a career, you were a teacher, like early childhood family education. So you did a lot. I mean, you taught, yeah. You hope to leave, well, your hope was to leave a love of learning to the children. Can you explain what's early childhood family education is?
Yeah, early childhood family education is something that's unique to Minnesota. We have mandated early childhood family ed for every county in the state. It looks different in different counties. And California and I believe Illinois also have some kind of an early childhood program. Not this one per se, but something similar. And we believe that people who support early childhood believe that the first 5 years of a child's life is the most important in their learning and in their growth. And we also believe that parents are the first teachers of children. And so early childhood family ed brings the young child and the parent together in a classroom for usually 2 hours. And it looks a variety of ways. You may go into the home or whatever, but it's the parent and the child together. And then we set up learning activities for them. And with parents, future or past generations used to live with their parents or live in family groups close to each other. And that still is true today for some families, but most families travel. Like I have a daughter living in California. So if she has a baby, she just is engaged. So I don't want her to have a baby right now, but if she has a baby, then she would not have any family support because she's in California and we're all here in Minnesota. So a program like ECFE really helps those families who are alone or who have moved to a new state, don't know anybody in the area.
It offers support.
Yeah, it offers support. And what happens frequently is you get people in the same class who's like, oh, you only live a block from me, or we're on the next block. And so then we begin to form relationships in it because the classroom is a trusting, non-threatening environment. You can say hi to people and you don't need to be their best friend, but then you end up becoming friends because you get to know them in the class.
Cool. Yeah, and you run into people.
Yeah, I do. It's funny because if I walk around the lake or I'm in, around town, somebody will come up to me and go, oh, hi, Annette. You used to be our ECFE teacher and Johnny's now going to college or something. And I'm like, oh, hi. I'm so glad, but I don't remember Johnny. And sometimes I do, but not always.
Would you say you had like 200 people a week?
Yeah. Well, if you teach 8 classes, and you've got 20 parents and 20 kids, then that's a lot. Almost 200 families. Yeah, And if you have both parents, or more than one child, you can
Yeah.
easily have 200 students a week, and then just trying to remember their names is like the big challenge.
So this kind of just leads right into the next question, and because of the support thing. But it was apparent very quickly in our conversation when we had, like last week, was it, that family support is very important to you. Can you give us a typical week schedule for you and your husband with your grandchildren?
Well, we've been latchkey for a couple of our children since before the pandemic. It's just, now they're not living with us any longer, but they live close, and we're latchkey. So summer school just ended on Friday, but what we were doing was they came at 7, 2 of them came at 7, a different one, our 12-year-old, came at 8 o'clock, and then we took the 8 and the 5-year-old to summer school, but we picked up another 8-year-old on the way. So 3 of them went to summer school. The 12-year-old came home, and then he went to Washburn, which just 3 blocks away, at noon. And then we went back and picked up the 3 kids at 3:30 and brought them home, and dropped Jack off and brought the other 2 here. And then David came back from Washburn, and then my husband would take him home to Richfield. So it was taxi. This summer's been taxi service.
Totally.
So, and today I have just the 2, the 8-year-old and the 5-year-old, and we went to the library this morning and the pool this afternoon. So
When your first grandchild was born, didn't you take her pretty young?
yeah, when my first granddaughter was born, it was a sabbatical year for me. So I ended up having her from early on. When my daughter went back to work, I had her every day, all day long. And then I would go to school at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and my husband would, have the baby for about an hour, and then my daughter would pick up the baby. And then then they had a subsequent child. So I had the 2 kids, and I ended up just being able to take care of them 2 days a week. And that was my days off of school. If I worked on Saturday, then I could have the girls on Thursday and Friday, and then teach Thursday night. So one of the things with ECFE was I was able to rearrange my schedule a little. And then when my third daughter had her first child, Ben, he was born in September, and my second daughter, Erica, had another child in September as well. So we had the 2 boys. And I said, oh, I'll watch your kids. So then I taught 4 nights a week, and Friday and Saturday. So I had the boys 4 days, all day long, and then taught at night.
You definitely are one close family.
Yeah, we support our kids. We want to do as much as we can. Well, daycare is very expensive.
Yes.
And when you have 2 kids, it's even more very expensive.
And if they're babies,
and so, we know that, well, having watched children for 30 some years or 40 years, I kind of know a little bit about it. And so I felt like I was qualified.
I think it's beautiful. It was amazing and inspiring to many. Do you have any other words you'd like to add?
Well, I just want to say that we're just blessed to have our grandkids with us. I mean, a lot of our friends have children in other states, and so they don't get to see their grandkids all the time. And I'm really impressed that they still like us, and even the older ones. I was able to take, I have one granddaughter who's leaving for college on Saturday, and another granddaughter that's a junior in high school. And I got to take them to brunch the other day. And that was really nice, because then I get to talk with them and, see what they're doing with their life and what their dreams are. And I'm really glad to be able to do that. I just feel blessed that we're able to.
Yeah, you're a cool grandma.
Thanks.
So now let's get back to a book, and it's one I'm most curious about, actually. You self-published a chapbook of poetry, proper poems for ladies and a few naughty ones too. Can we hear a poem and then the story of what's behind this book?
Yes. Okay, there it is, page 61. I wanted to make sure I read this other poem too, and I lost the page. There it is. Okay. So you are talking about one of my favorite books, Proper Poems for Ladies. These are my three aunties on the cover. I think they're looking pretty sassy. It's fun to have them on the cover, and of course now you know where I get my sass. Huh? So I'll tell you a little bit about the book and then I'll read the poem, okay?
Okay.
So I have 48 first cousins on my dad's side, and we get to know each other. We like each other and we get together. So the ladies among us have been trying to get together once a year on one venue or another. And not all of us can make it every time, but it's nice to be able to. And in what year did I publish this? 2021.
Oh,
2019.
okay.
The first published, and we were going to Madeline Island. So 15 of us went to Madeline Island, and I decided I wanted to make this book for them. And so I made this book and I just self-published it because I just basically wanted it for my family. And then I sold them all, or I gave out what I wanted to give out, and then I sold the rest, and people kept saying, I want that book. So I published it again and they all sold out. And so now I decided, well, all right, I'll do a second edition of it. And I added a couple of poems, and I did the edits because, you know, even if you've got it published, there was that one mistake on one page. So we tried to catch all those.
Mhm.
So let's see
Yeah,
if I
we always have the right though to change our poem.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so I'm going to read one of the poems that I like, and it's called Concert, and it's hyperbole, but I think it's a good poem. Anyway, Concert. She bent over, and her flowing skirt covered a backside as wide as a Sunday afternoon, the rhythm of the day, slow and lazy, reluctant to hurry, leisurely and lengthy. That skirt, full enough to gather up, with pockets so wise as to hide all kinds of comfort. Sip some sweet tea and sit a spell, she said, from behind the measure of her bent body. Then turning our way, serving up a sumptuous tray of delights. No sorry repast this, but an invite, so welcome as to melt the butter in the kitchen crockery, so swollen with tenderness as to marinate hearts, like a ribeye roast going to church supper in its marinated juices. She was as mellow as the chubby thighs of a one-year-old child, resolute as the arthritic fingers of a grandma, done darning socks every night for 50 years. She hummed a tune and smiled her wide, slow summer breeze to put you at ease, while she sang that old spiritual you instantly recognized. The song was round as the yon virgin folks sing about that long ago and holy night. Mellow tones full of emotion, longing, and love, full-bodied notes that linger on the air until one is no longer aware of their own breathing, until one is finally fully fulfilled and thankful just to be alive.
So when you gave every one of your family members that went to Madeline Island, you gave them a copy.
Right, 15 of us got a copy, and what was so fabulous about this is they were so grateful for it, and we stood around the table, sat and stood around in a circle, and we each read from the book. They picked their favorite and they read. It was fun. It was really fun. It was a special time. And I thought it was really special for me, but somebody at the family reunion we had, one of my cousins came up to me and said, "Oh, I thought that was such a special time when we were all reading your poetry." So I was glad that it wasn't just special for me.
Well, you come from a family of poets, as I remember.
I do come, and you think when you're first starting out, I probably was maybe 38 or 40 before I said I'm a poet. I'd been writing poetry for years, but I didn't claim that title for quite some time. My great aunt, Emily Featherhuff, has a collection of poets. She was not a published poet, but her daughter published her works and gave it to us, sold it to us after Aunt Emily passed away. And 2 generations before that, my grandmother also wrote poetry. And so it's nice to get a sense that that's a genetic thing.
Mhm. Yeah, it's cool. So I'm curious, tell us about your muse. What inspired you to write? And is it different between genres?
Yeah, it is. I think that for poetry, there are so many poets who really speak to me. Maya Angelou is one of my favorite poets, and River, I didn't tell you this story, but maybe I can share a little story if you don't mind. My sister and I, my mom had said, it was in her later years, and she said, "I want you to go to Barnes and Noble and pick up this poetry book of Maya Angelou's." And so we went, my sister and I said, "Oh, we'll go to Barnes and Noble and we'll have lunch after that." And so we went into Barnes and Noble and we found the book, and there among the stacks was Maya Angelou walking in the store. And I was like, "Oh, is that Maya Angelou?" And the lady that was with her turned to me and said, "Well, yes, it is." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, is she gonna sign books in the store today?" And the lady said, "No, she was at another event in town and they were just visiting." Well, then not 10 minutes later, they announced over the loudspeakers in the store that Maya Angelou happened to be in the store and she was going to sign autographs. So my sister and I both went back and got our own Maya Angelou poetry book. So we had three here, and we went into the line and we had to wait in the line. And when Maya sat down, she said, "Well, I wasn't planning to sign autographs today, and she turned and pointed to me and she said, "But you asked." And I was just like, so starstruck. I couldn't even believe it, So it was fabulous to see her and then to have her sign. And I couldn't even, I was just stuttering. I couldn't even talk when she signed my book. And then we went next door after that, and we sat down and I said, "Don't you just want to stand up and say, 'Do you guys know Maya Angelou is just across the hall?'" So anyway, my brush with fame, she's fabulous. But now I'm really liking Amanda Gorman as well. And Maya Angelou is one of her faves. I also like Lucille Clifton. I like Poe's work. I like William Carlos Williams. There's a lot of really good poets. And as I was saying to you earlier, we have so many fabulous poets here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's just amazing how many that are really good. And I could name for 5 or 10 minutes, but I probably should stop.
Well, I just have one more question, and then we'll go to the 5-minute reading. If you could give a new poet one piece of advice, what would it be?
One piece of advice would be to write every day.
That's
Write
good.
something every single day, not your signature in a checkbook.
Totally, I agree.
And a bonus would be read everything you get your hands on.
Cool. Well, do you have a 5-minute reading for us prepared?
I do, actually. I'm going to give you an eclectic, because again, variety is the spice of life. In this book, it's one of the Origami Project poems. It's called Earth in My Journey, and the first poem is called Earth in My Journey. And so that's what I'm going to read first. This was published in the Minneapolis Southwest Journal in September of 2017. I wanted to put some earth in my journey, get down to the soil, dig up the loam until it's some, plow and plant a little in the earth of my life to see what grows. I wanted to sow a new seed in the turf to see if a better person could walk this earth. That's my journey. And then those shoes from Proper Poems and a few naughty ones. This is one that could be rated naughty. Those shoes. Heels worn down and rubbed clean of color, toes scuffed and stained from running in the rain. They've seen too many late nights on the dance floor and more. Too many times slung across the room too soon to gather strength to stay together. The high cherry red, no longer bright, yet they still gleam in the night and show off her feet as she walks down the street. They cost plenty, those shoes, yet they've been worth every callus, each blister, and all the pain 4-inch stilettos dispense. They didn't hide inside like a slipper waiting to be needed, nor provide that soft shaded comfort sandals might offer. A wild ride and sideways slide into home was what money was spent for, and that's what was got. So poems like that. A short supply of viability. One of my favorite poems out of this book is called Resurrection. Many of us call our burial plots a little land. We have a little land somewhere, and that's what we call ours. Resurrection. My husband and I own a small plot of land overlooking the Mississippi near Highway 110. Only now it's called the Crosstown Highway 62. The land moves like a memory alongside that small, still dose of water. The grass is so short it doesn't move. So long it bends and leans into the shifting breeze. It reflects from the hill off the placid water down below. You could roll down the hill into that pond, or sit next to the slab with your ancestor's name, the date, the graphic, the metal flower pot. The land blurs ancestry, creates a smudge of colors that obscure, creates the calm, the peace, the tranquility for those resting, residing in repose. All one can see is the land in its green pixelated colorscape. The territory below the land speaks softly of newer colors. These acres have got more soul than the blues, more soul than Willie Nelson's harmonica player. He's been stuck underground, serenely playing between gigs for years now. Everything here is formed in relationship to every other living thing around it. Each are everywhere and nowhere, from east and far east to west and wild west, from deepest north to deeper south, lying here, resting here, easing into the land. Okay, this one makes people cry, so get out your hankies if you want them. His flowered past. This is a true story that my mother-in-law told again and again. And as the dementia took her, she would tell it more often and remember. His flowered past. She tells me how he looked back then. She with her red hair, white skin, just a girl in love, but still aware enough to know her family would not accept his inky Italian blood, would see him as too dark. Chuckling, she tells how she powdered him with flour before introducing him. His full black hair and she so fair. His tall, muscular build and her so small. The flour falling off his handsome features to his shirt front. They told her, look elsewhere. He isn't the one. but he was. He always was. He held that bill to the end, even as the cancer wasted him. Kept his muscular frame despite chemo's slow spin. His mahogany skin smoothed, faded with the ash of illness. The streetcar rumbled every night past her corner, and he on it, just far enough away to stay out of sight in the light of the street lamp. He kissed her, and she still remembers her heart racing when she and he hugged the darkness. She strokes his lush black hair. Laughing, she tells the story again.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. From that to something a little crazier. As I've talked with people who have someone that they're watching, they talk about their own death and what they want. So this one's called a convenient death. I want a convenient death, quick and painless, one that leaves people wishing they had even one more day with me, instead of wondering if I will ever depart. I don't want to last long, lingering nights, laying listlessly as family or friends fake funny repartee by way of entertainment, while bemoaning my sorry plight in the hallway outside my bed. Nor do I wish to last past the need of me, beyond the necessary requirement of my living for someone else. Of course, what I want and what I get may be different indeed. So let me bleed enough to satisfy those who need to see red. Then let me be led to the door of death to depart without further ado. Do we have time for one more?
Yeah, we have time. One more.
Or two, just one?
Well, we can do two. Let's do two.
Okay, two more, okay. A Single Sparrow. This is one of the ones that is a newer poem, but I like it. A Single Sparrow. Is it not part of God's design, this cosmic intention? Time is uncertain to men on earth, hidden in the moment between past and future. Yet the smallest space of redemption can pass in a flash. A sparrow shall not fall without our Father knowing. The meanest flower that blows offers thoughts that lie too deep for tears. When paths cross at a particular point in time and space, the butterfly's wings emerge, fill out and grow as life's fluid is pumped into them. And coming into the mystery of it all, it is the thing itself. Without death, would we make any significant choices? Would we confront any limitations? When our body is buried, our ashes mix a new pattern with the sand and wind and water. Our hearts flung into the void to become newly minted. What is the truer truth? You will find no remedy for the strength of love, nor the length of death. Yet, what would we do with immortality anyway? Okay, and lastly, this is the last poem in the book. When I die, lift me up. Say my name, fill your cup of time with memories. Sing my song, yet be free of sadness and despair. Don't go there for too long. See me and your children's children in their tears and laughter. Then after they are asleep, hold a memory of me you plan to keep.
Thank you very much, Annette.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'll have to get
Thank
my
you.
hands on that book. So we do have just 5 more minutes. So Julie, do we have 2 winners?
We do have 2 winners. Barry,
No way.
closest
What
to
a
the,
surprise.
and Charlie.
look.
Barry came closest to number 7. Charlie came closest to.
No, he went over.
He did, but there were only 5 guesses and there was nothing else close to 7.
Oh, okay. And so you guys send a direct message to Annette with your address.
Yes.
Oh. How do we
Give me
find it?
your address.
How do we find Annette?
In the participants, if you hit participants,
Oh, okay, okay,
and then you can scroll down, you'll find her in all the people.
okay.
And in the chat, Donna Isaac has said, can you speak of your heritage? We know about the Italian husband and mother-in-law. Oops, and I just, the flowering of the skin is so vivid and sad.
Oh, yeah, it is vivid and sad. A lot of times I cry when I read that poem, but today I was good. So I'm English and German, and I tease my husband because I've been accused of being Italian and Irish because I have auburn hair. And a lot of people say, oh, your wife is Irish and you're Italian. My husband looks very Italian. But I am neither Italian nor Irish. I am English German. So that's my heritage.
Oh, well, are there any other questions in that chat?
That is all that I see. Susan Chambers is reminding everyone to get in your submissions for the LOMP competition.
Yes, mine are in.
Mine are
I
in.
really love what they've been doing on I love what they've been doing on the Instagram, just showing one
Oh, I like that
contest
too.
at a time.
But the reminder was really for the new manuscript competition. Annette, it's a chance to do your second book.
Oh,
It's
okay.
$1,000 prize.
Oh, really?
Publication of a manuscript, and that deadline is August 31.
Really?
Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Susan. Mhm.
I'll have to look into that. I do
Yes,
have to
River,
say,
that's a good way for you to get yours published.
yeah, it would be. If it would get chose. I have to share really quick. I thought it was really funny is me and Julie, we both submitted to the lump and we didn't talk to each other about what we were going to submit. And when we were all done, she goes, oh, well, how many poems did you submit? And I said, 11. And I said, I go, how many did you submit? And she said, 11. And it was just like, I don't know how that happened, but
Great minds think alike.
yes.
Funny. Let's see if I can get these addresses off of here.
It'll end up saving it too. So if
Oh,
you don't-
good. That'll help.